Okay. Hi guys.
Good morning.
How was how was your week?
Busy.
Great. Who did any homework? We got one hand. What'd you do?
I was looking at business letter introductions,
Okay.
and I started my data entry for the database.
Okay.
So, and I looked into. I still need to get my pictures done, and I
Yes.
tried to do them myself, but
No.
no, I look as white as a ghost, and so I
Uh
got to do some.
Toby Andrews.
yeah, I like Toby. You have your pictures done. You don't, right? Or
I
you
have
do?
a picture that I do,
Okay.
but it's not my absolute favorite.
Well, let me say this about pictures. For $100 or less, you can get a decent headshot. Sometimes $50, you can get a decent headshot. You'll use that photo for the next 5 years because we don't change that much. If you amortize that over 5 years, it's worth every penny. So that's not one. If you're going to use a photo in your business, don't scrimp. That's not the place to scrimp. Just not. Now you may have, like my daughter-in-law now takes pictures, and there's so much digital pictures out there. You can get a decent one taken by a lot of people, but get a decent one. Better if it's like Toby Andrews. She does some very creative stuff. She did mine. Did she do yours?
The last one, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's a lot of creative things that can happen in photography that make you look that much more appealing. Just don't scrimp on it. It's not worth it. Okay. So you've done that. You've got a list of names yet started. Have you started a list of names yet?
No, I've talked with people. I've met with like about houses
Okay.
and homes and stuff like that, but I don't actually have
Okay.
information.
Well, that's very important. Start your CRM. Lynn, did you have surgery this morning? Or are you still being treated? We'll talk later.
I was gonna say Albert did it this weekend. I was out in the sun too much and my arm hurts so
Oh, I'm sorry. Mm,
so.
okay. So anyway, um, homework's important, and what we're going to ask you to do this week is very important. So get with your. You should be meeting with your mentor now, probably once a week. Okay. But particularly this week, I want you to meet with your mentor because I know what the homework's going to be. So this week we're talking about how to get you guys going through sellers. Um, some of these slides are going to seem a little weird in this market that you guys are blessed with like no others. I've never seen anything like this in 20 plus years of real estate. The only thing I can liken it to is Las Vegas in the late 90s, early 2000s, and California about the same time frame. The reason that you should have, let's ask some questions here, and you pros don't answer yet. Why do you think you're better off with listings over buyers?
To acquire buyers when they get there,
That's good.
'cause, buyers think that they can find a house on their own as well.
That's good. Anybody else?
Well, your seller will hopefully be pleased with you and turn into a buyer.
Indeed. Also, you get a sign in your front yard with your name on it. Everybody who drives by it sees your name. So those are what, four good reasons we got to have listings. And being that so many companies out there now are selling leads, those are all buyer leads. There are very few companies actually selling listing leads yet because it's easier to attract buyers. They're looking for a house. I go online, I look for a house. I call that company and say, I need an agent to show me one, two, three somewhere. And they send a buyer agent out who's never seen that house. Buyers are getting more and more desperate in ways to find how do I talk to the listing agent? I want to know somebody who's actually been in the house and knows about it. So don't, you'll find in this business, a lot of people either go all with buyers, all with listings. 50-50 is a good mix. And in a day 10 years ago, people would have said, I want buyers because I know I can get a house to sell. There's too many listings. Today, we don't have near enough listings. You get a listing, and literally 10 years ago, this agent's no longer with our company. I was told by them they would never list a house for more than 1% because they didn't think they were adequate in their listing procedures. So they would only list for 1%.
I think that when you work with list sellers or buyers, it's just like the market. We always talk about it's a seller's market. Well, and when it's a seller's market, you want to be working with sellers. When it's a buyer's market, you want to be working with buyers.
And I think you never want to avoid listings, even in a buyer's market.
Yep.
Because the buyers want to find something. And
I'm sorry, but the thing about having a listing in a buyer's market, you want me to have the microphone? Is that
yeah, I want you to be able so other people can hear you. Just leave it on. It's good.
okay? There you go.
Now it's on. Yeah.
Okay, the reason that you want listing in a buyer market is because your sign's out in the yard longer, so you're going to have more opportunities to get that buyer.
You get to do more open houses because your house is going to be on the market longer. I mean, you get to do
And
open
that's
houses
true.
and
Yes.
and so forth. I mean, you don't like. I'm just saying, if you the bread and butter is with the market. At case in point, I put a house on the market in Mays. I flipped the switch on it because contract fell through. I flipped the switch on it Saturday at noon in Mays, $120,000 house, and in 36 hours, I've had 12 showings.
So I want to make a big point here. Never in your career do I believe you should be all one side or the other. You're getting a difference between how Lance and I may view the market. You're getting a difference between Lynn and I and Lance, how you view the market. It's a good idea to have listings. It's a good idea to have buyers in any market. It will be harder if it's a buyer's market to sell a listing. On the other hand, you can have more open houses and you can pick up more buyers and. So there's always ways to visualize it.
And we call that market share. The more market share you have with your listings, the better off you are. And that's a huge key thing right there. And the other thing is, and we're going to kind of dive into this, is listings are much easier to manage because you're not out running around all over town showing them houses. Whereas listings, if you do everything right that we're going to show you in here, if you do everything right, you just sit back and maintain communication, maintain that trust with the sellers, and let all your marketing stuff do the work for you.
And we do have a lot to cover today, like last week. So we're going to try to keep on track. But 3 things that a buyer would want, 2 of these things are already solved in today's market. Get the highest dollar for the house. We're getting the highest dollar for houses right now. Help them get their home sold quickly. 90% of the listings are selling really quick. It's negotiation. So those are items of value that you should keep in mind, but also keep in mind every realtor out there says, I'm going to get you the most money. I'm going to help you sell it fast. I'm a great negotiator. Well, you need to be a great negotiator too. Okay. We've already talked about problems and challenges, so I'm going to skip past that. Take a moment and read this slide. So I'm not reading it to you. About done? Okay. So I want to point out the second paragraph. Because you guys are new, each one of you are going to say, my job is to demonstrate to the seller that I have skills, resources, and tools. And each one of you are going to say, I don't feel confident or I may not know the answer. And yes, you have a perfectly good answer. Look them straight in the eye and say confidently, I'll find out and I'll get right back to you. I can get that from my mentor. That's why I'm being mentored, and you get 2 realtors for the price of 1. I have a broker that's one of the best in the city. We can help you find that better than anyone else can. Keep those answers up in your mind and be confident about them. Don't feel squeamish.
And if you, in your first couple of listing presentations, or at least at the minimum, the first one, your mentor should be along there with you.
Okay. And sometimes your mentor may not know, right, Lynn?
Right.
And that's okay. That's why we're a company that has each other's back and has the resources that we have. Do you know there are 8 pre-licensed instructors at the Board of Realtors? 4 of them work here. We have some highly educated, dedicated real estate agents in this company who are extremely informed about the market and legal. So don't lose that. Okay, pre-qualify a seller. You can kind of glance through this while I'm over talking to you. I have no doubt you guys know what it means to pre-qualify a buyer. Of course you do. But you have to pre-qualify the seller just as well. And it's a good term to use for this. If you don't know why somebody wants to move, you got no idea what you're going to do to help them sell their house. If I'm only moving because the market's really hot and I want to see what the most money is that I can get for my house, that's a different motivation than I'm getting transferred to Oklahoma and I have to be there the day after tomorrow. Okay? So finding out the list of what people want when you're pre-qualifying them is very good to know. Now, in this class, a lot of these things are telling you ask them on the phone when you first talk to them. And it's not a bad idea to converse with people. You may not have as much time to get an answer for everything there in that list up there from them. But if you can get a couple, and if they're more willing to talk, try to get them out, all of it. I probably would very rarely ask somebody over the phone if they know what they owe for their house to see if they can clear enough money to get out of it. That's a more in-depth conversation. Now, you could ask when you have them on the phone, do you own your house outright? No, I have a loan. Well, in that case, you might at least want to check what the balance is so we can figure out if there's enough equity. Oh, I've been here for 25 years. I've got equity. Great, no problem. I haven't gotten that number from them, but I've got a feel from them. Are they informed? Are they not informed? Do they realize, those kind of things? Anything to add to that?
I think with the pre-qualifying, what I would suggest to you is in your deal, there should be a list of questions, a questionnaire that you can ask your sellers. This is your opportunity to listen more and talk less. You definitely want to be talking less. You want to ask a lot of questions and take lots of notes as to why they're wanting to sell. This last couple months ago, I had sellers who the only reason they were selling is because they wanted to get out of Wichita and get out of Sedgwick County because of the mask order. And, I just sat there and kept asking questions, what about their situation? Where are they moving? If they've got something purchased. I just kept asking questions and just getting a feel for what they were doing, because as we will discuss, once you know what their goals are, then you can curtail your listing presentation to what their needs are.
So pre-qualifying, absolutely important. Get as much information as they're willing to give over the phone. Don't push them if they won't make an appointment. Now, here is a pre-qualifying questionnaire. I just want to pick a couple of these to talk about, but the rest of them I kind of want you to read on your own because I don't want to sit here and waste your time with stuff that you can read. So number 6, and I want to say this up front, I would not ask questions the way they do because they sound too formal, much more formal than I would speak. I would never see how much of the proceeds do you need. You know, proceeds to me is not a word I would use. Lance may very well use that, be fine with it. I would say you're going to get some money from this house. Are you going to be using it to buy a new home, or have you figured out what you're going to do? But you see, I've asked a question, or I'm still asking the same question. And it's important to know, what are you going to do with the money? Well, the kids and we're moving to Hawaii. Really? I love Hawaii. You know, I know some great agents there. Could I refer you out to an agent? Somebody that I trust, so that you know you can trust them as well. Now, what does that referral do for you? You know what property sells for in Hawaii?
My favorite question on there is number 4, and I wouldn't say what's more important to you. What I always ask is price important for you, or are we in a time crunch? Are we needing to sell it quickly? And they'll usually say both. What I always explain to them is it's a sliding scale. And this is how I do it in front of the sellers. I say, if you want top dollar, plan on being on the market for a while. If you need to sell it quickly, your price is going to come down. You can't list it extremely high. You got to list it reasonable. And they get that. They understand that. And I tell them my goal is to try to balance those two out, so that we can sell it relatively quick and get a fair market price for the home. So that's one of my favorite questions.
And one of my favorite questions is number 11. Would this evening at 5 o'clock be better, or is tomorrow morning at 10? Here's the problem. Too many of you guys are going to ask a bunch of questions and never say, can I list your home? When can I come over? Can I see it? You got to make sure we're getting that appointment to come see the house. Don't forget that part. It's nice to have a really long conversation. And if the conversation ends with, we're thinking about 2 or 3 years down the road, well, then you have some problems. You don't really want to turn them off, because you still want to stay in contact with them. But whatever you tell them today isn't going to be relevant 2 or 3 years down the road. So maybe you go over and look at their house. It's very nice. It's very great. I can tell you what the market value is today. I don't know what it'll be from 2 or 3 years, but let's talk about things you may want to fix before we get 2 or 3 years. And so you continue to build a relationship. It depends on where they are, where the relationship is. If they're a cold call, you may be a little more hesitant than if they're somebody you've known for years and you know that they will come back to you, and you want to keep that relationship going.
So something that I want to cover at this juncture, when you're doing the pre-qualifying, I'm going to ask Lynn how she does this. There is 2 ways that you can list properties: a one-step approach or a 2-step approach. I personally love the 2-step approach. I prefer to do the 2-step approach. The difference is when you're pre-qualifying, when you're talking to a prospect on the phone and they're wanting to list their house, if they admit to you or say to you that they're going to be interviewing realtors, chances are they may only want to do a 1-step process. And what that is, 1 step is they're wanting to give you the information about the house, and they're going to tell you all about it, and then they want you to work up a CMA. Give us a CMA. Come do the listing presentation after you've done that. So you're only meeting them 1 time. That's why we call it the 1 step. So you are asked to do a CMA based on a house or property that you have never seen. And I'm telling you right now, a seller will blow their house up like it is the Taj Mahal. Okay. And then you show up and the place is a wreck. And you here you are, come prepared with your CMA, your listing presentation, and you walk in and you've already got your numbers written out, you're ready to go. And you walk up to that house and you're like, holy crap, I got to adjust this. I got to change this. There's no way this house is going to sell for this. That's what I cannot stand. So you need to ask for that appointment to come look at the home. And that's the 2-step process. So the 2-step is when you go and ask for that appointment. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, in order for me to do a better job for you, to give you a better price on your home, can I come meet with you at 5 o'clock this evening, or would 10 o'clock tomorrow morning be better? This will give me an opportunity to see what your home has to offer. And I want you to sell me on your house. Then you go and look at it, and now you have the information that you need to be able to put a specific and accurate CMA together. They may tell you they have 4 bedrooms. Yeah, but that 4th bedroom down in the basement is not a legal bedroom. Is that going to change the price? Yes. Okay, so those are, you want to ask for that appointment to get in and look at it. And that's the script, if you want to call it that, to use is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if I can see your home in person, that will help me better determine a price range for you. And they're going to push back a little bit. No, we're in a hurry. Da, da, da. I promise you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, it won't take me but 5 to 10 minutes just to walk through the house. I won't take too much of your time. I just would like to, and it'll do you justice.
You know, it's funny. You can sell, I can sell, maybe Lance can too. I can sell whatever view that I think I need to in the best light. So in Lance's example he just gave me, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I promise you appraisers won't even start to pull up numbers until they've seen your house. My job is to give you what I think the appraiser is going to tell you your house is worth. I want to do it exactly the same way.
Lynn, do you do 1 step or 2 steps?
I do the 1 step.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you what Greg does. Greg feels that a property is worth approximately what it is in the neighborhood in a range.
Mhm.
I will put my numbers together, but I won't put a price on it until I've walked through the house. I can do that in one house and one, but see, the difference is Lance is very scientific about it. And my approach is much more by gosh, by golly. Okay. So I can go in with the range and have an idea of where we would end up very top and very bottom and where in the middle.
What I do is I take 2 different folders with me. I take one that does the whole listing presentation,
Mm.
and then I have a separate one for my market analysis, because if I walk into that house and go, oh shit,
Oh crap. Yeah. Oh crap.
I don't even bring out that other folder, and I'll sit there and I will go through with the seller. This is what I'm seeing. This is your area. You know, how do you feel like you compare? And I have literally had people be upset at prices that they've gotten from other agents. And I'd gone in with the same price. And when they tell me that, I'm like, oh, okay, now I got to back up a little bit. So I'll sit there and I'll pull my desktop up and or laptop up, and I'll say, okay, yours is this, yours, this is this, this is this. And they really honestly come down and say, I see where you're coming from. And then they're more realistic about their price. Now, that's not in necessarily today's market.
No, and let me say this. There are arguments for 30 years or more going back. Should I do a 1-step or a 2-step? This is nothing new or
It's not.
unusual here. You will find your own way of doing
Yep.
things.
You're going to be forced into doing one of the 2.
And one or two of them will become very comfortable to you.
Right. And it's really how you're trained too,
Right.
to find your comfort level.
So Lynn brought up a good point, which goes right to the next slide. Thank you, Lynn. A pre-listing packet. Some people believe that they will not send out a pre-listing packet because that's giving away too much information and they don't want to do that. Other people believe that sending out a pre-listing packet prepares the seller for a bunch of questions that they may have that the pre-listing packet might answer to save you time during the actual listing appointment. It's also something that not lots of realtors do every day, is send a pre-listing packet out because it takes a little extra work. And the pre-listing packet would be, who am I? Well, there's a list there, and we're going to go through one because who am I? Where was my office at? How does the system work? What's the process before and after? What's my value? Those kind of things. A lot of things that we built into Cloud CMA for you guys would be considered a pre-listing packet, in that you could take a lot of sheets out of there and say, I'm going to email this to you. Now, there's various ways you could do that. In Cloud CMA, you could save a pre-listing packet. And that happens by taking a template and say, this is my pre-listing, this is my listing. You could run one CMA and save it twice, once as a pre-listing, once as a listing packet. You could take sheets out and build a pre-listing packet, have a standard one that you email over to the client all the time. This gives them things to read and so on. I'm not going to go through everything in a pre-listing packet at this moment. We'll look at a few things. But what's important is I'd like you to get with your mentors and build a pre-listing packet. And in fact, that's one of your homework assignments this week, is to bring one back next week to show us. Some of it is in the old days, and I used to bring this thing around with me whenever, back in the middle 90s, when the best color printers had just come out, or inkjets, and the ink cost a fortune and took forever, and only 1 in 30 people had a color inkjet. I had a color inkjet. So of course. So, yeah, like, and it went, so I built a listing presentation book. And back in the day, a listing presentation book would be approximately what your pre-listing packet is now. It had all the things about what the phone numbers will be, what advertisement looks like, what flyers look like, what happens when a showing happens. And we'd put them in a leather book, and we'd carry that around to us to listing presentations because we wouldn't give out the paper. Nowadays, I think you could either email it or print it, whatever makes you the most sense. And I'll bet, Lance, do you email a pre-listing packet or do you do one?
I do an abbreviated listing package that I call my pre-listing package, and I usually am doing a two-step approach. So when I meet with them for the first time and they're showing me through the house, I leave it with them and ask them to review it. And they're, depending on the pre-qualifying questions I've asked, will determine which pages I do or do not include. So I don't, like Greg said, I don't want the competition to know some of my secret sauce. Not like any of us have secret sauce, but you know, there are certain things that I will not include. I sure don't include any type of pricing or anything like that.
Yes, I
You-
agree with him. And another reason you don't want to include pricing is because all of a sudden they think, oh, I'll go FISBO, and they've got a price.
Yep.
So you don't want to include the pricing.
Well, and Lance said one important thing, pre-qualify them. So if I've got somebody who's got a short sale house, do you guys know what short sales are?
I'm doing one.
That means there will not be enough money from the sale of the home to pay off the bank. Then I'm going to include information in that pre-listing packet that would be different than if they own the house cash outright. They don't need to see the stuff about short sale. Do you understand why you would want to customize it after you qualify them? So, one thing I really like it here, and that's the last point, make it fast. If you can get a pre-listing package out prior to, now Lance said he doesn't, that's fine because he's doing the two-step. But even with the two-step, you want an immediate appointment. You want to get something to them, an email that confirms. You want to get them something in their hands so they start building the relationship with you. Okay, make that fast.
With that being said, I want to throw this out there, and Greg and Lynn may disagree with me on this. I don't want the sellers to feel like I'm being anxious, excited, too pushy. So yes, I will get, if it's a one step, I will send them information. And usually I'll send it to them right after I have talked to them on the phone, if it's a one step. If it's a two step, I drop it off.
I have found recently with that home beat that as soon as I get off the phone with a potential seller, I send that to them. And I think that's awesome tool.
Great, thank you. I posted an email of that on my Facebook yesterday on one. The email I got said there were 10 homes sold, and the average days on market over here is 11 days, and there's none for sale and none pending. That's really kind of a cool little email, but that's a different story. I agree with Lance. I wouldn't sound so anxious that I'm beating him up for the appointment, but I would send him an email confirming the appointment or text or some sort of communication.
And what would work out really well that softens it a lot is to send them an email that says thank you for the time, for your time and visiting with me. I'm looking forward to discussing your goals, your real estate goals. In the meantime, here's some general information about how we go about selling our homes
Perfect.
and include that. But if you include it with a thank you, that's perfect.
And see, that's exactly what the script says here. So we're going to move on. So this is a list of some things that they suggest. I'm going to go down just a couple of them. And when I tell you that every one of these is in our Cloud CMA listing and presentation, you can get all of them from there. Work on the marketing plan for the property with your mentor. I assure you they have some sort of marketing plan that they put together or they borrowed heavily from someone else. A long list of websites where their home would appear. That's actually a page in the Cloud CMA of where they all go out to. So it looks very impressive to people. You all may start saying my qualifications and achievements. Well, I've been a realtor and you're my first listing. What are going to be my qualifications and my achievements? Use more than just and draw on more than what you do right now. What have you done in the past? What has been your previous job? Remember, I told you you have value, and I've helped people in the funeral home. I've helped people at the American Red Cross. I've helped people. I have done. I have bought. I have so on. Use the company's achievements with you. We've been around as long as Google. How's that? This company has been here as long as Google's been in business. We didn't grow quite as big as they did. A list of reasons why you're the best listing agent. Well, you know, if I've got somebody that sold 400 listings in the last 3 months and they've got another 100 listings on the market right now, how much personalized service are you going to get from them? Mr. and Mr. Seller, you're going to get some of the best service you ever had.
One of the best lines I use is, it's not about the number of homes I sell per year, it's the quality of service that I provide. That
There
is
you go.
what I am more interested in. I want your referral business.
This has on here a property disclosure for the sellers to complete. I would not have them complete it in advance. Now I'll let the other two tell me why I'm wrong.
You're not wrong. I don't fill that out until I know that we have we're listing.
Does everybody know what a property disclosure is? Okay. So that's your assignment. I want you to build a free listing and not only the stuff that we have in Cloud CMA or that you talk to your mentor about, but be sure you've used some of that stuff we did in week 1 about who am I and what makes me a good agent, and put some stuff in here about why you're going to be a good agent for them. Because before you go on your new first listing appointment, you need to think about that. You need to have some responses for why should I choose you? And it should be more than I'm licensed and a member of the local MLS, because there's 2,300 competitors that have that answer. What makes you a better choice? Maybe you know them. Maybe you know their circumstances. Maybe you've been in similar circumstances. I'm a single mother with 2 children. I moved doing that. I see you're getting a divorce. And while that really sucks, I can certainly put myself in your shoes. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can draw on that your life experiences make you unique, and use those. Now, listing presentation. So, as Lance said, you can do a 1-step, you can do a 2-step. At some point, you're going to be presenting numbers to them. Remember what I said about the Cloud CMA and my old listing presentation book. So in the old days, I'd go in with my leather book and I'd turn it around and we'd flip through pages, some that were just about that I always presented, some that I thought, would answer some of the questions they have. Like what does an MLS listing look like? What does this look like? What happens? And those are all very important questions. Lots of agents in this market don't do anything like that anymore. They grab a spreadsheet off the MLS and carry it in there and says, I've done all this study work to find out what your house is worth. and this is the number. And while that's not necessarily bad, that doesn't tell you what the value is or what all the other things go into when your house is on the market. So, as a very brief example, we have had showing services for some time. I built a custom page that says, here's who's going to call you, the numbers that it will call you from or text you. You have to approve the showing, and so on. That was before the MLS had a standard sheet for it, or other companies were saying, here's what's going to happen when showing time calls you to set an appointment. Some companies do that, some don't. If you don't have a listing presentation of some sort, what does your client do when this strange 800 number calls them and says, I want to show your house? They don't know. So we try to put things together, and you need to be aware of what happens when the showing service calls. Mr. Seller, you can have a text message or an email or a phone call. Which do you prefer? And that's some of what our listing presentation does and what your listing presentation should do. How do you set up a house when somebody's going to show it? What if you have 10 showings in one day? Do you want the lights on all day, or what do you do with the dog during that time? Various things to think about. Anything to add to that?
Remember, when you hear us talking about a listing presentation, it's not just presenting yourself, it's also presenting the CMA.
Exactly.
It's both.
What you're going to find is that all your vendors are pretty good at the CMA part. Sorry, but it's true, because it's hard for us to come up with the number, and we carry a considerable amount of responsibility to say this is what the number is going to be, and a lot of people can start feeling guilty or timid about that. So don't forget, it's not just the number. Begin the conversation. Listen and adjust. I love that. Listen and adjust, because whatever the conversation tells you, that's going to be where you're going to go. I love that. And so we're going to go through some questions here real quick. There's one thing I want to point out at the top of this, and then we'll go down to the questions. Start off in a position of trust. Work with your sphere of influence. Do you know why your first listing appointment should be to your sphere of influence? Somebody who knows you well. So you can screw up.
I was gonna say practice.
Exactly. Because you will screw up. And you will fumble, and and it's okay when it's family. It's not okay when it's a $3 million bank owner who called you because he saw your sign someplace. That's going to feel a little screwy to you, and you don't want to fumble that one. So your sphere of influence is a good place. Now, I'm not trying to go out and say, hey, everybody, I need my brother to sell my house so that I can, practice them. But you could also say, listen, I got to practice on somebody. Would you let me do it on you? Just even if you don't want to sell, just let me practice with you. Okay. Let's see, listing presentation, technology, the MLS, online exposure. I do want to ask Lynn and Lance this question. MLS and online exposure. Do you guys go through an in-depth discussion of what either one of those are? Do you think, how do you present those? What do you show your clients on MLS or online?
I focus a lot of my attention on the MLS, and I will actually pull examples of other listings that have cell phone pictures of a $250,000 house. I will show them how examples of how there's not a lot of information about the listing. And I stress to them the importance of the MLS. It used to be in the past that you want to put just enough information out there that you got their attention, that they wanted to go see the house so they could see the rest of it. In today's market, you want as much information, as many photos out there as possible, because what's going to happen? They don't see all that information right off the bat. What are they going to do? Swipe left. And they're moving on. So I explained to them that what the MLS is. And if you don't know how this works, come see me, and I can go in better detail about it. The MLS is a central hub for all of us local realtors to use for our listings. And that MLS then distributes all that information to all the brokers in our area. And that's where all of us realtors have access to it, is through our brokers. The brokers then distribute that information out to the Zillows, the Trulias, et cetera, okay? So it is imperative, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that we focus our attention on the MLS, that we get as much information out there as possible, which leads me to my photos. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I use a very high quality, high dollar camera to take your photos. I have in my listing presentation one sheet in there that talks about our photos. When we started using our camera that we have, that the company has, I went and took a listing and I took all the photos with our camera. I also took the photos, the same exact photos with my regular camera, just the regular camera. I have the two differences. I have them on that sheet, and that you can clearly see the differences in that. And I'll point that out to them. You know, I'm not going to come in there with a cell phone or a cheap camera and take pictures of your $200,000 listing. I'm just not. And so I really stress the importance of the MLS and the photos. I even go as far as I just listed a $100,000 property out in Augusta. I did the 360 virtual tour on it. Because in today's market, people want to see that stuff. So it's no longer how many butts can you get? I mean, it's still how many butts can you get through the house, but you want how many interested butts can you get through the house?
And I want to say a couple of words there, then I'll go back to Lynn. 6 years ago, when we bought those cameras, very few people were doing professional photography because they were charging a ton. Only the very top realtors were doing it on $500,000 homes now. Now you're going to find a lot of realtors who will pay somebody to go out and take the pictures because there's a whole lot of people taking the pictures for a lot cheaper. You know, the competition drives the price down. You can have pros take good pictures. Some pros take worse pictures than we do. Some take very good ones. So don't just say ours is the only system to use. There's a couple of ways to do it. But when you're new in this business, shelling out $150 for every house you list to get pictures taken can feel ominous. And in our system, you could do 30 photos and a virtual tour, 360 tour for less than $100. And if you were to pay a pro, you'd probably be somewhere around $300 for a virtual tour and the photos. So we try to make things affordable for you. But I will say the second thing I'll say about the pictures. Just as Lance said, I could limit the number of pictures I put in there. I think what people do when they see limited number of pictures say, there's something wrong with
Yeah,
that
what's wrong
house,
with
so
it?
they didn't take as many pictures. I ain't even going to bother. So don't do that to your clients. Tell your clients you're going to overwhelm them with pictures. Lynn, do you explain the MLS and online when you're there?
I go in depth about the importance of good pictures, like
Mhm.
Lance does. And I flat tell them with the internet, we have to sell your house online first,
Mm-hmm.
or they're not even going to come over.
Yep.
As far as explaining all of the little nuances of the MLS itself, no, I don't go into detail.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just curious. This says it not so succinctly as Lance, but you're not there to win their listing just from the numbers you put together. You're there to provide value, provide them more than the other guy. I like leaving a listing presentation with them in some fashion, either printed, either an email or something, because other companies may or may not do that very well. And our system really has both very nicely, an online presentation and a printed version. So if your mentor is not familiar with that, tell your mentor that you'd like to have a class with me and them so that they can get familiar with what it does. There you go.
And what I'm gonna take just a couple minutes here to explain something to you. The one thing that when you are going over your CMA, and the one thing that you as realtors want to avoid as much as possible is don't buy the listing. Anybody here understand what that, when I say don't buy a listing, do you have any idea what I mean by that? Oh, so they what? List with you. Correct.
Exactly.
You hit the nail on the head. Don't overprice a home just to get the listing. If you find out, or if the sellers have informed you that they are interviewing other realtors, you are going to go up against competition that will walk in and tell the seller, ask the seller, what do you think your house is worth? Oh, we think it's worth 150,000. Well, you know, in the back of your mind that it's only worth 140. Okay. So are you going to be one of those realtors? Oh, I think that we can list it for 150 just to get the listing. I hope not. You guys have got to be more, have more confidence in your ability to sell a house that is appropriately priced. You're going to run into sellers who think their home is worth a hell of a lot more than what it really is, which is great. That shows they have pride of ownership. What I do is I will actually literally tell the sellers in my pre-qualification when I'm meeting them first time, Mr. and Ms. Seller, please don't tell me what you think your house is worth. And they'll look at me kind of funny, like, well, why not? Don't you want to know that? And I said, no, because I don't want that to skew the numbers I put together for you. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, I'm going to come to you with a price range for your home that you may or may not like. And then I explain to them, you will also visit with other realtors that will tell you what you want to hear just to get your listing. I don't do that. I'm trying to build your trust and earn that rapport with you. And literally at the listing presentation, I go over my listing presentation with them and my CMA with them. And then I ask them, so after I've gone over this information, what do you think your price is worth? And I have it already written down. I'll literally tell them, this is a game, guys. I'll set the sheet aside and say, I've got my numbers written down right here. So you know I'm not cheating. I'm not writing down what you tell me. And I know it says, help the seller set the price. That's what I'm doing is here's the information. Now, what do you think your home is worth? Now, if a seller does tell me up front, I know that I've got a challenge ahead of me, because if they are selling something higher than what it should be, I can go in prepared. So many realtors may say, I want to know what that number is so that I'm prepared. I like going in and saying, here it is. I can read them as I'm going, read their body language and so forth. And I like being able to handle those objections at that time. It does. And a lot of times this is a true story. I've had it happen 3 times in my career where I have turned listings away because the sellers tell me, we want to list with you, but we want to list at this price. I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. I really am honored that you want to select me, but unfortunately, I don't want to waste your time and I don't want to waste mine by trying to market a home that's overpriced. And they'll go with another realtor. 3 times this has happened in my career. They have called me back like in 30 to 60, 90 days. And they say, you know what, you were right. We had no luck with selling our home with this other realtor. We want to list with you. And I go back out and list it for what we originally talked about. And I look at what was previously listed and I'm like, holy Nikes, what was this realtor thinking? So what's that?
That's an example of buying the listing.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And don't become that realtor. You guys I promise you will show more confidence and more trust. You'll earn more trust from those sellers if you stand up to them other than just cowing down to them.
Pay attention to them. Oh, go ahead, Lynn.
I agree with Lance in a lot of different things that he just said, and I understand and can appreciate his approach. However, I'm going to do the flip side. I'm going to say, I want to know the value of their house. And when they ask me, well, that's why you're here, I
Yep.
said, that's a true statement. It is why I'm here. However, what I say is, I want to know whether I'm going to excite you and make you very happy, or whether I'm going to disappoint you. And we'll go
Yep.
over the different aspects of the pricing. But my thought is if I know up front what their number is, then as we're going through the house, I can adjust my body language, my thoughts, my observations to either get them excited about the price I'm going to, or I'm going to be able to say, oh, you got water stains on the roof here, ceiling. That might be an issue for a buyer. They're gonna, confused mind always says no. So if they're confused as to why that water stain is there or if it's been fixed,
Yep.
they're gonna say no to your house. So that's why I like to know the price. I want to know, what am I setting myself up for, and how can I present it to where they're going to agree with what I'm going to tell them for a price or not.
And neither of these approaches are wrong.
Exactly.
They're both
Neither
right.
one of them, neither of them wrong. And the thing about it is, if a seller discloses to you what they believe the value of their home is, you need what's the very first question you should be asking them? When they say, when I ask you, Michelle, when I tell you, Michelle, I think my house is worth 200,000. What should you say to that?
I'm not sure, Lance, honestly.
Nope. So if I'm your realtor and you tell me, well, Lance, I think it's worth 200,000, I'm going to look at you, Michelle, and I'm going to say, okay, how did you come up with that number? Are you talking to neighbors, or are you looking at sales data? Are you looking at Zillow? How did you come up with that number? Because when they share information with you about how they derive that number, that is going to so prepare you for your listing presentation. So if you tell me, if Michelle says to me, well, I know my neighbor just down the street has, he sold his house for, 210, I should at least be able to get 200 for mine. Okay. So now I'm going to take a note and I'm going to find that house, and then I'm going to show up on my listing presentation and I'm going to show her, okay, number one, what your neighbor didn't tell you is that he paid $5,000 in closing costs for the buyer. So in reality, he only sold it for 205. Number two, his house has got 120 square feet more than your home has. It's a larger house. Number three, he's got a fourth or third bath, whatever the case may be. And so I will go over those changes with them. So you need to know where did they come up with that number, and be able to approach it. If they say, well, that's what Zillow tells me, my Zestimate tells me, then I always handle that by saying, well, Zillow's not always correct. Their data is usually old, and they don't take into account closing costs, a lot of different situations. The information I'm going to provide you is going to be very detailed and specific, because it has to be.
So I'm going to say two things about Zillow. Number one, Kansas is a right to privacy state, so Zillow cannot get actual sold data from the government, nor the MLS. They will now have access to it since they're a brokerage here. But before, when they were in advertising, they didn't. And in fact, IDX feeds don't really have sold data in it, so Zillow would have to do a lot of work to scrape that much data. I'm just going to say that. And because we're a right to privacy state, Zillow has a statement that says they can be off as much as 40%, 20 up or 20 down, because all they can do is guesstimate what it is in Kansas based on the mortgage registration tax, which is public information. But they have no idea how much the down payment is.
Thank you.
So Zillow will be off. And second, Cloud CMA has a sheet in there that is the online valuation sheet. And they show how far Zillow was off, up or down, on every property that you include in your CMA, to show how much the spread is that Zillow is off on the homes that sold here. So feel empowered against Zillow on those things. It's already built there, and you can use that as a demonstration. So that moves us right into the next homework assignment. While you're doing pre-listing packets, I want you to do a CMA on your own home. And bring it with us next week so we can look at it with you.
Now, do you want the mentors to help them with that?
If they want the mentors to help, that is fine and recommended. If they would prefer to tackle it on their own, I'm not going to stop them. But I would suggest that a mentor would be a good place for you to start, because there are some nuances to CMAs that you may not see. But I'd like you to do a CMA to come up with the valuation. I don't care what the valuation is. I want to see what your work is. And I want you to have a pre-listing packet. Okay?
With that being said, every realtor does their CMAs differently. Greg talks about using Cloud CMA, and there have been a few times I use Cloud CMA. Majority of the time, I'm using I'm old school. I go in with my MLS profile sheets, and I have highlighted the differences between what has sold compared to their house.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually able to show that to them specifically. And I like being able to see their reactions as I'm pointing it out. Oh, this one, this house had, a 3-car garage. Yours only has 2. But it sold for this much. Does that make sense? So you can do Cloud CMAs. You can do my old school like I do. There are a number of different ways. None of them are going to be wrong. It's what's most comfortable for you, as long as it gets the job done.
So I'm
That's all
going to
that
sell
matters.
you on Cloud CMA, and then Lance will tell me why I'm wrong in a minute. But just a moment. There is nothing that will replace going into the MLS and hand picking out the listings that you're going to use. Nothing. And I never preach that. Cloud CMA has a function about the 10 closest. That's good general knowledge, but it has nothing to do with an actual market value. You have to go into the MLS. You have to pick out the listings that you're going to use that most represent homes like the one that is your target. Now in Cloud CMA, what you can do then is check those off and export them to Cloud CMA. And once they're over there, it's a much prettier presentation than Lance has. Lance could do everything that he does in Cloud CMA, but there's a learning curve and there's stuff and it's more difficult. I get that. I'm not trying to say he can't. I wouldn't make the adjustments that he does in Cloud CMA because it's tough, but I won't do them in the MLS either. I will point them out when we're talking to them, but I won't highlight them and do that much work. You have to learn what's comfortable for you, but get a presentation that makes sense to you and your client. And there's information in Cloud CMA, like the Zestimate page, that you don't get when you're doing the MLS version. So look at it with your mentor and figure it out. But do a CMA on where you're living at currently. Okay, isolate and overcome objections. Now, Lance gave you a really good example a minute ago, and we're going to go through, I think it's the next slide that I want. Yeah, we'll get that. And one of the things he said that was most important was ask a question. If somebody makes a statement and you let it drop there, I guarantee you've just made an assumption that may or may not be correct. Because it'd be real easy for me to, hey, Michelle, you want to sell your house for $200,000. Why? Where'd you get that number?
Yeah, my neighbor.
Yeah, if I don't ask that question, and my brain is going, oh yeah, another one of those estimate people. Well, I've got the answer for that, and I would never find out if that was really where she got that price from. So then I do all this work on Zestimate, and she goes, it's in the house up the street that's sold. I don't even know what Zestimate is. And I've confused and lost her. Ask the question, and we've got a couple here that we're going to talk about. So let's start with this one. I want to list it for more. Here's my response compared to, I'm having a real hard time justifying that price. I need to know how you got to there. And somebody says, what do you mean justify? Well, I look at all the sold value in the neighborhood and compare it to other houses that are just like it, because that's what an appraiser does. And no matter what we get a buyer to buy it for, if an appraiser doesn't agree with our price and they've got a bank, it doesn't matter. It's going to go down to whatever the appraiser said. So I justified the highest price I could based on your neighborhood. That's one answer I have. Another answer I have, I could pick up my home at 4810 Harding in Wichita that was built in 62 and is not worth any more than $180,000. And I could move that to the beach on Oahu and it'd be worth $7 million. Has nothing to do with what the house is. It has to do with the location. If it's on a beach in Hawaii, it's worth $7 million. Okay, and it's very true. A house that is, oh, let's say in the old Crestview area, 21st and Oliver, is going to be worth less than Rocky Creek, even though they're equally affluent, nice houses at one point in time. It's just location, location, location. So that's my answer to I want to list it for more. Anybody else want to share an answer? You haven't already said.
I think the other, one of the comments you made just made me think of it. A lot of times you will have sellers, and I like to use, how do I link back up? A lot of times you'll have sellers who have poured a lot of money into their home and they've refurbished everything, they've redone everything and so forth. You need to be prepared for that because they believe that if they spent $15,000-$16,000 putting new windows in, that they should be able to add $15,000 to $16,000 to the list price. It's not true. You're supposed to have operational windows, whether they're the original ones or brand new ones. So that's a discussion for another time, but that's one of the things that you have to look at. One of the things that I stress when I say, well, we think it's priced more, is like kind of like what they have here in the scripts is I understand how you feel about it, and I am thrilled that you have such great pride of ownership in your home. That tells me that you're going to work very hard to keep it like this and to sell it. Unfortunately, like Greg says, I can't, it's hard for me to justify. And you have to remember this, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that over 90% of the time, buyers who are going to purchase this home are going to have to get a mortgage. What does that mean when they have to get a mortgage? And they'll look at you, well, they have to have it appraised. And if the home doesn't appraise, you're probably not going to sell it at that price. And I said, this is why I use an appraiser's approach when I'm pricing out your home. That's just one of the ways I do it.
Lynn, anything to add? Okay.
There are some good scripts in here in the booklet that you really need to hone in on as far as the different objections that you may come across.
So I need you two pros to tell me how you answer this question. Would you cut your commission?
I literally, that's what I say, no. Thanks for asking.
I basically kind of do the same thing. I say, unfortunately, I will not cut my commission for you. And the reason being is because of the service I bring to the table. I'm going to take care of you throughout this entire transaction, and my time is worth money. And if they push back on that a little bit, I'll just look at them and I'll say, here I am staying firm on my commission. Imagine how I'm going to be staying firm on the sale of your home. And that's usually, oh, shit, excuse my French. That's what the sellers usually respond by saying, yeah, you're proving your value and you're going to do the same thing for us and this price of our house.
And I want to say something about this. There are companies out there that will not allow you to cut commission unless you get manager approval first.
That is something else. If they give me pushback, I'll just say, you know what? It's not even my commission. It's a broker's fee. And my broker charges 6%.
Okay.
So I just let it go at that.
Now, I empower you guys to use which other statement you want, but empower is the proper term. So let's say Cece has somebody who's selling a $300,000 house and buying a $450,000 house. She gets both sides. And they say to Cece, would you sell our house for a little bit less since you're helping us buy the other house? And Cece, I give her the choice. Yeah, I'll do it for 2% because I'm making 3% on your $450,000.
And I do that. I do cut my commission if
Yep.
I get to.
I do offer that, especially if they're repeat customers, repeat clients. I do that. If it's a new client and I'm helping them sell and buy, it depends on the price range that I will cut. And I'll flat out tell them, I said, listen, I'm going to help you out. I can't do anything about the commission in regards to the buying side, but I can help you out with the listing side. And make sure you explain to them, if you end up doing that, guys, you need to make sure you explain to them that I'm going to take 2%. Okay, well, you're going to pay, 2% on this, but I'm not splitting that with the other realtor. It's coming all out of mine. Okay,
Right.
does that make sense? Because we're thinking about it. If you have 6%, it's 3 to the buying side, 3 to the listing side. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the buying side's still going to get 3%. They're not going to get 2.5. Okay, I'm taking 2, they're taking 3, because we don't want to lose any potential buyers because an agent sees that they're going to get 1% less. And yes, there are agents that will not show a property because of that.
Absolutely.
So when you negotiate that with a potential seller
Mm-hmm.
and they sign the listing agreement with you, at that point is when you're also having them sign the future buyer's agreement.
Yes.
We'll not go down the path too much. I will say that we've had people here that have done that, and then the buying side fell apart, so on and so forth. That's a tactic that you can use. I'm saying you're empowered. I'm not
Shouldn't,
telling you to
yes.
do it. And please discuss with your mentor. My biggest point to all that was there are some companies that say only the broker can lower my fee. There's at least 3 I'm aware of in this big companies. And I don't like that if you're independent business people. It's just not something I want to deal with.
Just the other day, I had to, in order to keep a deal, a $230,000 deal together, the other agent and I decided to split the cost of a repair that showed up basically during the final walkthrough. And my seller had already moved out of state. And so the other agent and I said, okay, we'll both eat $400 out of our commission in order to get this thing closed. And Greg allows you to do that within reason.
Pretty much. I guess ultimately what I'm saying is I'd rather talk about the better way to do it next time than to have you stop and look stupid in front of your client this time.
Yeah.
Make the mistake and we'll figure out the better way for next time. Okay. Going on. I'd like to hear from Lynn on this one. Can't we at least try at a higher price? We can always drop it later. Lynn?
Honestly, I say yes. We can try it at the higher price, but be prepared to reduce it to the price that I have suggested within, a week, 2 weeks, and a week in this market.
Lance?
I do the same exact thing.
Okay.
And if their higher price is like outrageous, that's when I turn it down. If it's within reason, I will literally say, what, I'll tell you what, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what we can do is list it at this price, but I'm going to put it in the listing agreement that you agree to lower it to X price within so many days if we don't have an offer or have it sold. We don't have it under contract. And you have to keep in mind, and Lynn does this, I know she does the same thing. You have to let your sellers know that the most important time for your listing, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is that first week. Because you have all these buyers, especially in today's market, you have all these buyers that are out there looking and waiting for your house, for a house to come up, and boom, yours hits the market. They're going to immediately look at it. And if you're overpriced starting out right off the bat, do you think they're going to submit an offer? Probably not. They're going to move on or wait for the next one.
And in this market, as to Lance's point, if you're on the market more than 3 days without an offer, people start thinking, what's wrong with that house?
Yep.
So let's move this out of the context of this market for a moment and how Greg would handle this a little. First off, I believe that we are agents. I take agency very important. And that we are to advise the client, but they're to decide on their own what they want to do. My best advice here, Mr. Client, is this is the price that your house will appraise for. If you price it above where it appraises for, there are agents out there advising their clients, we'll go ahead and offer them more because we know the appraisal is going to come in less and you're going to end at that price anyway. And so, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I got to warn you, if you do this and we get a bad appraisal, you could actually end up selling your house for less than if we priced it appropriately and got a good appraisal. Because the contract says if the house doesn't appraise, you'll renegotiate the price and you're going to be back here anyway. Now, if you still want to do it, we'll do it your way. But I want you to be prepared. If the appraisal doesn't come through, we're going to have to lower the price of that house.
And that really is, it's just informing your clients what, and prepare them for their options and let them decide.
Exactly. And I warned them. And if the appraisal comes in low and sticks with them for 6 months, I told them up front, but they made the informed decision. It's not because Greg said no. Greg provided them with information and they decided. Okay. Anything else on that? Okay. Close. I hate this closing. If I got this done for you today, would you list today?
Sounds like you're still in the car.
I'd like to get your house on the market as soon as possible because it's moving so fast. Now we've got to schedule photographs. We've got to do some other things. Do you want to move forward? Would you like to sign the listing agreement?
I think what you're pointing out here, Greg, in my opinion, is a hard close.
Yes.
I think if agents realize that there are many, many soft closes throughout the entire conversation,
Yep.
that you don't need a hard close ever. It's just asking for the appointment at the right time.
Yeah, and it says right there, a true professional is prepared to close for the listing at any time. There have been so many times I have shown up for that listing presentation and all I'm coming in there with is my CMA because I've already won them. They've already told me we're listing with you. Let's go ahead and get together and talk numbers.
My favorite listing appointment was a guy named Larry Stover who passed away from a heart attack 25 years ago. And Larry said, I got to go list a house. And I said, okay, well, I don't really have time. He says, don't worry about it. Larry walked up to the door, said, sign here and walked back. It was a 3-minute listing presentation. But it was a guy that he knew very well, a guy that he'd done business with for a long time, and they didn't have a lot to converse about. So be prepared at any time. Please don't do a 3-minute listing.
And Greg has a really, really good point there is you've got to be prepared to close too. I remember one time I was a jewelry salesperson and I didn't have the expertise or the, experience. So this great guru went with me, actually took the diamond to the house of the client because she was ill. The man said on 4 different times, let me get my checkbook. And that guru never asked, go ahead and get it.
Nice.
And we walked out without a sale. And it was at that time over $20,000.
With what we're trying to tell you, and this is what I do, is in my man purse, I call it my man purse, my bag, I have a little file folder. It's a plastic file folder that sets apart, and I have all my listings in there. And that way I can easily turn to it when I'm not and get information on it when I'm not there. But the other thing I have in there is I have a blank listing agreement, I have a blank buyer's agency agreement, and I have a blank contract, a purchase contract. I always have that with me. As a matter of fact, I'm just thinking about it, I was like, shit, I probably need to go switch those out because I know there's been some changes since the last time I used it. It's been a long time since I've had to pull one out, but it has happened.
It does, indeed. Starter kit. Build your, I won't make you do that because I've already told you what we're going to do. Marketing the listing. Servicing the seller. I really want you to talk to your mentor about this. In today's market makes it so much harder to understand what true servicing of the seller is. You can put a house, if it's under 250 on the market, you'll have 12 showings and 3 offers in the first 3 days. You don't get time to service the seller. Now you still have to take all your pictures, stuff, put it in the MLS. You have to do the things to get it ready. But then in a typical market, we'd want to tell the seller what else we're doing. We're notifying other people in the MLS. We're doing a reverse prospecting. We're letting our sphere of influence know. We're putting your listing on Facebook. We've got a free Facebook ad that goes out to for 3 days to the zip code around us. There's a lot of things that go into it that if I tell you that now, I'm filling your head with a bunch of stuff you won't remember a year or two from now when it becomes important. So keep in mind that you want to, no matter what happens, keep in contact with the seller.
That you can't stress that more. You've got to nail that on the head.
You've got to keep in contact. And even if it's the first 3 days, call them at, 3 hours in, say, wow, I can't believe the number of showings. Is your phone blowing up? Just so they'll know you're paying attention. Send them an email that said, I got some great feedback for you. Let me send that over on that. One thing I wanted to, I was just had one in my brain. What was it? Oh, one thing I always like to do as part of my listing presentation, especially in today's market, give them a contract that is marked through that says sample or something, and let them read that darn thing before they get an offer on their table. The reason I like to do it is I promise you, you're going to read this contract, you're going to have lots of questions. And if I'm presenting 3 contracts to you that have a big dollar amount, you're going to get all excited and not read the rest of it. Read this now. So if you have questions, let's talk about them before the numbers come in. Okay, please try to think about that one. Know the house, stage the house, photos, upload in the MLS.
Stop right there. Guys, I'm going to tell you, and Lynn, I hope you will agree with me on this. With every listing, I make sure I have everything done. I'm talking about all the information, all the fields, all the everything is filled out, number 1, and it's done correctly. I have the measurements. Number 2, I make sure I have all my photos uploaded into the MLS. And number 3, I try, depending on how fast I can get the seller's disclosure statement back from the seller, I will have all my documents in the MLS before I hit active. I'm promising you, I have had so many buyers call me up and say, hey, we saw this house that just hit the market, because they're set up on a search and there's no pictures of it. What can you tell me about it? That frustrates me to no end when realtors put listings out there with no information.
One way to be able to prepare your seller that it may take you 24 hours to get their listing active is just say, you don't have a second opportunity at a first impression.
Exactly.
We
Bingo. That's great.
Got
Great
to
comment.
make it good.
So have it all done. The last listing I took over in Augusta, they wanted to list it right then and there, get it on the market. And I just had this conversation. I said, Kim, I said, while I really appreciate your attitude in getting this thing sold, I said, you want it done correctly, right? Well, of course we do. I said, in that case, you need to let me do do the house justice by getting the pictures done, getting them taken care of, getting all the proper information. Then we can go active. You don't want to lose any buyers because you don't have all that stuff in there already. Oh, I guess that makes really good sense. Cece's got something.
So I always wonder. With that, at what point do you have them sign the listing agreement? Because I've lost out on a listing before because I was talking to her and I was meeting with her and she was getting some stuff ready and then we were going to list it. And then in the meantime, somebody swooped in and got like an actual listing agreement. And
That's a great question. So here's what I'm going to tell you is, as an example, this one I listed in Augusta, I literally signed that listing agreement a week before we went active. And as soon as they say, yeah, well, we're going to list with you, as soon as you have an answer from them, you can sign that listing agreement today and start the marketing time this time next week. So I write in there, okay, so what you're telling me, CC, is you're going to list with me. That's great. I really appreciate you deciding to go with me. Let's go ahead and start filling this out. And that way a lot of times what I'll say is by having the listing agreement signed, that allows me to really start getting the wheels going on getting the listing prepared. And so I'll go through and I say, okay, now here it is, Tuesday, today's Tuesday, Monday, right?
Monday.
Monday. Here is say Monday. Would Thursday work for you for us to go active? Because Mr. and Miss Seller, that'll give me a chance to get all my photos done, get all the marketing prepared. And that way, when I flip that switch Thursday morning, it's all out there.
And in today's market, I would even go with the next step and say, so if you want this on the market tomorrow, are you ready to spend the next 2 days not being at home? Because
Mhm.
that's how many showings you're going to have. No, I'm not. Well, then why don't we start it on Friday? And we won't accept any showings until Saturday. And that way you can be at grandma's house, in Newton or whatever you want to do. So there's more to think about than just being on the market. Is what are you going to do while you're on the market? I'd like to also point out staging the house. A couple of things about that. I'd like you to walk through your mentors and maybe even do your own house. There's a lot of things we talk about when we're getting a house ready to sell. Refrigerator magnets used to be a big one. The refrigerator's full of numbers and letters and pictures and all kinds of things. We want to empty the house out a little bit. And it's not to say that we want it to look completely empty, but we want a home that is a little depersonalized so that people can start visualizing their stuff in it. And if they see a wall full of all the pictures that you've had from 3 generations that have lived here, it's hard to personalize it for them. That does not mean we want you to make it unlivable or uncomfortable. You need to have furniture and stuff, but make it a little more neutral so that they can put their style, their possessions, and so on. When somebody walks in a home, a buyer, and says, "Oh, wouldn't our picture of Aunt Martha look great right there?" They're starting to visualize the home as being part of them. So that's important. Also, empty houses in a time would have been a lot harder to sell than houses that had some furniture in it. Now is not the market for that. Now anything will sell if it's livable. But there are things to think about in staging. We will in the future. Even I've seen people put up cardboard boxes and put a comforter over it so it looked like a bed. Things like that are staging so that it looks like a home. Keep going here. Put your sign in the front yard.
So real quick on that, planting a sign in the yard. So you can legally, you're not supposed to stick your sign in the yard until it's active in the MLS. Basically, is kind of the rule you're supposed to follow. But you're not going to get your wrist slapped or get called out on the carpet if you stick it in the yard within 24 hours before you go active. When I took that Augusta listing, I went out there with my lockbox, my sign, knowing full well that I wasn't going to have that thing active until the next day. And I stuck the sign in there. So you just have to be prepared for phone calls prior to. And if anybody calls you out on it, say, talk to my broker.
And I'll take that call.
Just don't set it out there for 3 days prior to before you go active. That's when you can get in trouble, because the rule is that sticking the sign in the yard is you are marketing the property, and if you're marketing the property, it's supposed to be in the MLS.
And I want to say something about that. There's 2 entities that we serve, the MLS and the Kansas state law. What Lance just discussed was the MLS rule. The state law says you can't put a sign in the yard till you have a signed listing agreement. Okay? So make it signed. Create an online presence, paper trail. I think we got pretty good on that. I'm not going to make you look through all of these. Some of them are so outdated, there's no way they happen anymore. No one does a caravan with agents anymore.
I was looking through this list. I started chuckling.
That hasn't been for 20 years. Flyers in an open box, brochures on display. We have our text message things. Put the sign writer on there. They get a thing on their phone that's got. All you got to do is put the sign writer on and it's done. That's it. It's so automated. Just put the sign writer on. GPS.
Oh,
Featured property site, broker's website, preferred placement. Those are all paid for if you want to buy them. Yeah. So anyway, we'll leave that for now because so much of this is already automatically happening or doesn't need to happen once you put it in the MLS. Communication channels, communicate. If they want text messages, text them. If they want phone calls, phone them, whatever they want. And be that upfront with them. Do you want me to call you on the phone or do you want me to text you? Would you prefer an email? What's your best way to get in touch with you? I know you work all day. You got to ask that question. It's a very important one.
I am going to really stress this to you guys. It is imperative, it is important that you are in communication with your sellers at least, at the minimum, once a week.
To piggyback on Lance, there have been times, and as you get experience, you'll realize it. You might want to ask, what comfort level are you with me communicating with you? Because there's some that I've had want to call me every day. And then there's some that, oh, I thought you got lost. And then I realized, oh, it's been 2 weeks. But yeah, put it in your calendar to follow up and then ask them how often they think it's convenient for them.
And the other, another great thing is, providing an item of value is every Monday morning with now I haven't had to do it because our market the way it is and properties are selling so quickly. For those properties that don't sell, I am providing them a weekly sellers report. It's an automatic thing for me to work up the seller's report and send it to my sellers because I want them to know this is what's transpired over the past week. This is how many showings you've had. This is how many the average number of showings that your competition has had. This is how many clicks in the MLS. Did you know that you can track how many agents and clients have clicked on your listing in the MLS? A lot of realtors don't know that.
And there's also a report in our betterks.org that shows how many times a property has been clicked on Zillow, Realtor.com, Better Homes and Gardens, any number of things. So, but right now, yeah, you don't have to do those. Contract to close. I want you to get with your mentor on exactly how to do that because every one of your mentors has taken a contract, presented it, done the earnest money, sat through the inspections and negotiations. That's more of a one-on-one conversation. So I won't go into presenting offers. I want to say a couple of things about multiple offers. We've had classes on them. We have some in our on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page. We created a spreadsheet to kind of help people. Dixie's got a real nice system that she uses. Multiple offers are so much more than here's the price I'm offering it. And your clients need to know that. It's not the bottom dollar. It's all of the other things that go in a contract.
The terms.
Thank you. The terms. Is it a loan? Is it cash? Is it closing in 3 months or is it closing in 3 days?
What type of loan?
What type of loan? How long are they asking for you to pay loan costs? When you hang on to a property for 3 months, you've got to make payments on it for 3 months and taxes for 3 months and electricity and gas and so on. And that could be something you'd say, no, I'm ready to move now. My new house is ready for me to move in. Or you could say, great, because I'm still looking for the house that I want to move in. That gives me time to find it. So terms mean a whole lot when you're going into this. Your mentors should have done multiple offers at one point or other. Because if they're doing anything now, they're doing multiple offers. And there are ways to evaluate them and work with clients. Again, that's one of those conversations I'd have before I get the offer. Here's a contract. Here's some things we need to talk about. Here's some things to consider. Also, you must, in my humble opinion, tell every other realtor out there that you're in a multiple offer scenario.
Darn it, you just stole my thunder. That's what I was going to talk about.
Sorry. Now, technically, you're supposed to get your seller's permission to do that. And I would highly advise them.
That has now become a part of my listing presentation. I talk about that at the time that I'm listing and signing the listing agreement with them, is how do we want to handle a multiple offer situation? Real estate laws state this: if you tell one realtor that you have multiple offers, what's the rule? You have to tell all of them. So if there's 5 of you in here in class, if I get an offer from Michelle, I'm going to go to Greg, my seller, and say, okay, we got an offer from Michelle. I've had 4 other realtors say that they may be bringing us an offer. Do you want me to let them know that we're maybe in a multiple offer situation? And then they're going to ask you, what are the pros and cons? You need to be able to answer that. Okay. They have, and you tell them you have 1 of 2 options, Mr. Fox. You can either tell nobody that you have multiple offers coming in, or you can tell everyone. You can't just pick and choose which realtors that you want to tell. You have to tell all of them. Okay. Because if it gets out, if agents find out that they were not given that opportunity when other realtors were, you're going to get dragged into real estate court. So just remember that rule. It's one or none, or all or none, I should say.
And I've never lost in real estate court for any of our agents because we do things the right way.
Yeah.
So that's why we never lose. I'd like that record to stand. I want you to talk to your mentors about rejecting offers. I don't necessarily agree with everything they say here, but by and large, unless they're just totally ridiculous, I think offers should be considered and countered. Too often people start, and this is at the point of selling your home and buying a home is an emotional decision for the clients. And what makes really good real estate agents is that we're emotional decision makers too, as up to the point of contract negotiation. And then we need to bury all of our emotions and become very calm, cool, analytical, trusted advisors.
And bury your egos.
Big time bury your egos. Too many agents out there decide that they're going to fight for their clients' earnest money. And they turn it into this emotional. I've had to hang up on an agent, and I never hang up on an agent, who kept berating me because of how emotional they got. And I kept saying, go call your broker. I was done after 20 minutes. Believe me, guys, if you're in surgery, when something goes wrong, you don't want your surgeon to lose his head and start crying. You want that calm, cool, analytical person. When you're rejecting an offer and they want to feel insulted because they saw a recording of somebody who didn't like the painting about Martha, that's when we have to back down and say, we realize that that's, emotional, but let's look at all the analysis, all the data, and make sure that's really the wisest thing. Because once you move out of the house, you're really kind of gone. Is that really what you want to do? Turn into that lawyer for that moment. Get them over that hump.
On the flip side, the letters that your agents are going to present with an offer
Mm-hmm.
puts the emotion back in. So you do have to really kind of be on your toes and make sure that they're making a good decision based on logic and not solely on a letter.
And with that being said, I completely agree with Lynn on that. And just remember, it is your seller's choice, not us, not ours. It is always their choice. I've had a seller take a lower price because we had multiple offers. He went with the lower of the 2, not by much, by 2, 3 or 4,000, because my seller was a veteran, the buyer was a veteran.
But it was an informed decision that we presented in an analytical manner. We don't get emotional with it.
And when I'm talking about egos, I'm referring to, don't get into that battle with another realtor as to why they submitted such a lowball offer. Don't get into that. Don't, because guys, you don't know. Well, 1 of 2 things happened. If they provided you with the low offer, it's either because the agent, they've got it overpriced and you need to come in at this low, and they're advising their buyer to do so, or the buyer is like, well, I don't think this is worth it. And the buyer is stuck, or the buyer's agent is stuck doing what the buyer wants. It's 1 of the 2. It's nothing else. We had one not too long ago that just closed that the buyer's agent was literally apologizing for the way it started.
Best agent I ever negotiated with was Cindy Carnahan. You guys have heard of her, I hope. If you haven't, you will. If you directly do a deal with Cindy, when she sees her clients, she's like a cheerleader in high school. Just, oh my God, how you doing? When she talks to you, what do you want? It's that. And it's not that she's being unpleasant. She isn't. She's a very nice lady. She will not share an iota of information, and she won't let her ego get in the way. She takes your information, she says thank you very much, and goes to the client. And then she'll come back and says, this is what my client responded with. Boom. That's it.
Yep.
There's no discussion. There's no ego. There's nothing about how dare you, how could you, why did you? None of that, you know? Yeah, well, we all get that way sometimes.
It's happened to me too, Lynn. There's times where I'm just,
I get so mad for my client. What do you mean?
yeah,
Okay, I'm going to stay out of the transaction process.
good thing.
Client for life. Okay, guys, I'm going to say just a bit about this because we're getting close to where I need to cut the time off. 67% of real estate consumers say they would do business again with their real estate agent after they buy a house. Only 20% of them actually do. And I think, and what the speculation has long been, is that's because you guys don't keep in contact with that client after you sell them a house. Oh, they just bought a house. They're not going to buy for another 6 years. I don't want to talk to them until, 6 years from now. Silly. First off, they might want to sell before 6 years. Secondly, you've developed a relationship with them over the last month, 2 months, whatever. And that relationship could refer other clients to you. And even more, they're people that thought you cared about them. And when you just turn them off like a fire hydrant because they aren't going to buy anymore, they discover, oh, we were just clients. Stay in touch with them. It can be real estate related. It can be non-real estate related. It can be clients that you send something every year that says, a year ago you bought your house. And I just thought of that time we went to blah, blah, blah. You can send them the home beat thing. This is what's happened in the last year in your house. Or you can say every quarter or whatever. You've got to stay in touch with those clients because they will use you again and they'll refer you to other people. And even more than that, you probably became friends with them. Keep that friendship going.
A lot of my clients are now Facebook friends, and yeah. And what I do is I'll take notes, I'll write something down in the file once I'm done with that transaction about something unique about them. Like I've got one set of clients that she raises Shih Tzus, and she was so impressed with how her Shih Tzus took to me, and she started calling me the dog whisperer. And so when I reach out to her, I ask her, how are my little guys doing? Because I'm Uncle Lance to them, So, that I always keep track of, if a seller says, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to make these changes, a couple months later, I'm reaching out to them. Hey, I know you guys had talked about you were going to remodel the basement. Have you started on that? How's it coming along? Can I come see it?
I lost a deal one time because I sold them. It was my daughter's best friend. I sold her the house and I didn't follow up with her like I should. Her husband got transferred to Kansas City 3 months after they bought that house. Guess who did not get that listing because she did not stay in touch.
Well, we had an agent that worked here for a while. She's no longer with us, who was unhappy because both her minister and her cousin didn't use her to buy a house. Now, she was brand new and it was years ago. But I said, well, when's the last time you talked to them? Well, they know I'm a realtor. Well, that ain't enough, In California at that time, 1 in every 6 people was a real estate agent. Now, we weren't that bad here, but I guarantee you they know somebody who's a realtor. They do. Look forward. So we talked about, I told you I want you to list the last. I think 50% of your business should be listings at a minimum, no matter what the market. Sorry, Lance. Because you get people calling you to sell your houses and you get a sign in the front yard. Pre-qualify them. You're going to make a pre-list packet. You're going to find out, do a CMA. Fiduciary duties are my watchword. Will represent my seller faithfully and guide them to a win-win sale. I never want to have people working with us that are, I got to get a listing because I need the money right now. My house payment's due and I got to get, that. Well, we do for the benefit of our clients. And if we do that, the rewards come ultimately. Clients know when you're out it just for the dollar. They do. I don't need to do that. Thank you for attending. Go forth and do your homework.
Stop the recording.
Hmm?
Can I stop the recording?
I am going to do that now. Stop recording.